On today's Maker Mashup, day 4 of our DIY CoreXY 3D printer build. So today we're at day 4 of our DIY CoreXY 3D printer build, and we are finally to the carriage and the belt. That's what we're going to be focusing on in today's video. At the end of today's video, we'll be ready with pretty much everything on this printer except for the final electronics pieces. That's going to require some soldering, and I'm going to cover that in the next video. So I'm really excited about today's video because we are really far along in this printer and we're just a couple of steps away from having it complete. So with all that said, hey, let's get to work. Today we're going to add the pulleys to the printer. Then we're going to assemble the carriage, route the belts, tension everything, and then install the cable mount for the next video. We'll start with the rear of the printer, and that's going to require 4 pulleys total, 2 for each side. You're also going to need an M5 washer to separate the two, or alternatively, there's a 3D printed part included that you can use for a washer as well. Once you sandwich the M5 washer between the 2 pulleys, you're going to install it in the back towers, and then what you'll do is insert your M5 35mm screw through the top. You may need to use a bit driver to get everything lined up. Now we need to pull off the side blocks from the carriage so we can insert some M5 nuts. Now I didn't do this originally because each 3D printer prints differently, and I was concerned that the nuts might fall loose until we were ready to install it. So we're going to go ahead and install M5 nuts into this, and you need to make sure that it sinks all the way down to the bottom, otherwise the bolt will not be able to reach them. Now we're going to go ahead and assemble these pulley stacks. We're going to need one of these smooth pulleys, and then we're going to also need one that is a toothed pulley. So now we're going to take the smooth pulley, and that's going to fit inside the block here. And then after that, we're going to take the toothed pulley, which is black, and put that one on the little placeholder here. And then we're going to flip this over and put it on top, and that completes the stack. You're going to put together 2 of these pulley stacks. One of them is going to be in this orientation, and then the other one is going to be in the other orientation that allows you to use it on both the left and right side of the 3D printer. Once you have the pulley stack assembled, we're going to drop it on top, and then we're going to go ahead and insert the M5 40mm screws. You need to make sure that the screws catch the nut at the bottom. If it doesn't, you'll see it just spin and you won't tighten everything down securely. Once you catch the nut, everything will be tight. Once you have the first one in, then you're going to want to invert the stack or turn it over, and then that goes on the left side of the printer. As you can see here, this one is upside down compared to the one on the right. Now we're going to switch to the assembly of the main carriage. In order to do that, you're going to use this carriage plate, and then you're going to take some M3 8mm screws, and you're going to tighten the screws down, and you're going to want to make sure you have a good tight fit here. I like to use a cross tightening pattern here just to make sure that everything is flat and secure against the main carriage block. Now we're going to prep the belt connecting plate. You can see there's M3 nuts that I've already placed here, and then what you're going to do is just drop in all of the M3 nuts into the plastic 3D printed part, and you need to make sure they go very deep, as far as they'll go into the part, so that way the stepper has enough clearance when it goes into this part later on. A regular Phillips head screwdriver can be pretty helpful here in pushing them down the rest of the way. Once we have the part prepped, the next step is to add it to the carriage. And to do that, we're just going to use some M3 8mm screws, exactly the same way that we attach the carriage plate to the carriage block. You'll need to prep some other parts before we can proceed. This includes your hot end. You can see here I've done a little wire management with some shrink wrap tubing, but otherwise this is fully assembled and ready to go. And manufacturers of these hot ends all contain instructions on how to do that. You'll also need to pre-assemble and get ready your dual drive or geared extruder. And you can see here I've got mine all assembled, ready to go. The last part of the preparation is to go ahead and get the stepper motor ready. This is the gear that comes with the dual drive extruder. And once you get this attached on there per their directions, you'll be ready to go with the next step of the carriage assembly. Now we're going to go ahead and insert the stepper motor into the back of the carriage here. Now it should sit there because it is on top of the 3D printed parts. That gray board you see at the back of the printer is just so that way the camera would focus correctly while I was doing this assembly. It's really not necessary when you're putting it together. Now we're going to insert the hot end into the geared extruder. Now this just rests right in there, and then you attach the back cover of the geared extruder, and that will hold your hot end in place. Now we're going to attach the entire extruder assembly to the carriage. Now when you're assembling this, these very, very long screws that you use here go all the way back to the stepper motor and actually insert into the stepper motor itself. Now if you find it's difficult for these to assemble, sometimes if you're getting elephant footing, it's a little bit difficult for these parts to reach each other. So it's very critical that you have a good 3D printed part of that original carriage plate that we used in our first step. Before you tighten everything down, also make sure that your heater block is facing in the right direction, so that way you don't have to unscrew everything and rotate it later. Now we're working on the back of the carriage, and you can see there all I did was place the cable guide into place there, and you'll see there's a little space available. And once you drop that into place, then we're going to be attaching the cooling fan plate. Now this screws in with some very lengthy M3 12mm socket head screws, and they will actually go through this plate, then through the back plate and into that cable plate. And it holds everything together very tightly, so you need to make sure that you screw everything all the way down and it's very secure. The final screw on the bottom here that attaches to the carriage is an M3, and it's an 8mm button head. And the reason why you need the button head here is so you have enough clearance once we install the fan and the fan duct here in just a moment. Now we're going to install the fan duct, and this also uses the M3 12mm screws, and this just screws right into that plate that we just attached a moment ago. Now we're going to attach the 5015 part cooling fan, and in order to do that, you're going to use an M4 20mm socket head screw. Now these just screw right into that same plate, and you need to be careful that you don't over tighten these, and you also want to make sure that you align it properly with the duct itself. Now these will just screw right in, and once you've got it secured, you don't have to have these overly tight. They just need to keep the fan in place. Okay, so you can see we've got the carriage all assembled now, and the wires I've just fed through the cable guide here, and we're going to assemble the rest of that in the next video. So I wanted to take a moment just to talk about the cable pathing before I go into that on the video. Now, when you do your cable routing on this, the latest version of the carriage, it allows you to use these little black plates, and they will allow you to attach the belts right here and screw them in. And I covered how to put the nuts in for those in the video already. So what we're going to do is we're going to be routing the cable path, and it will go from the carriage through the blocks, around, and up and around the steppers. Now, one of the things to know about this is that some CoreXY designs have it where the cables cross over, or I should say the belts, have it where the belts cross over each other. This design does not have that. So your belts are all going to stay at the same level. So At the top here, if you're on the top belt on this particular tower, you're going to be on the top belt of this tower. There'll be no crossover, and everything will go en route back to the carriage itself. Now, I'm going to walk through this best I can, and I will also try to add an image to the part files that are on Thingiverse that will allow you to just get an idea of how the cable routing takes place. But if you have any questions on this, please feel free to either post something on our Reddit group for the LayerFused printers, or you can always visit the channel Discord where we have an X301 channel specifically designed for questions related to the printer. So any questions, check there. We can usually walk you through it, but it is a pretty simple process to get these belts in place. Now, we've been working on all these different videos, and I did want to take a shout out to put a shout out there for Buddy, who has been doing a lot of the QA work for us and for the channel. He's one of our insider Patreons, really a great person, and he has been QAing a lot of the nuts and bolts that I've been putting into the bill of materials, just making sure that everything goes there. So I just wanted to give him a shout out before we do the belt routing on here. He's really been very helpful in all of this, so thank you. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and do the belt routing, so let's get to work. We're going to start by getting one of the belt plates set up, and this is using the M3 12mm screws. And this is just going to attach onto the carriage here. Now, we already put those nuts in earlier in the video, so all we're going to do is get these to just barely grab the nuts, and it should go pretty easy. You just want to make sure that it stays on there. Now, we're going to start at the top here, and we're going to feed the belt in. Now, it is a tight fit, and one of the easy ways to remember how the belt fits in is that the teeth part of the clip are always going to be on the teeth part of the belt, and the smooth part will always be on the smooth part of the belt. So it's a good way to remember. Now, once you get this installed and the belt's just sitting in there, go ahead and tighten it up here because it'll make it easier as we route the rest of the belt. Once that's all set up, you're going to want to route the belt around the tower here. Now, it's a little bit difficult working with these longer belts, so you'll see in the video here, it takes me a while to get the full length of belt in place. Now we're going to route this through the top pulley on the rear towers. It'll take a little bit of effort to just push that through there, but once you've got it, then you're just going to want to pull your length of belt through there and make sure that it's tight against the towers on the side there, on the right side, and then also in the back. Like I said, these longer lengths take a little bit of time to feed through, but the last thing you want to do is cut your belt short and not have enough for the other side. Now we're going to route it through the top tower on the other side of the printer here, and you just pull it through the same way we did the other one. Now we're going to take a second here and install the pulley before we put the belt around the stepper. Make sure you line up the flat spot on the shaft there, and then you're going to want to drop the pulley. Now note the orientation of the pulley. The one on the right side is going to be inverted to this. So we're just going to drop the pulley down here, and it should line up evenly with the belt. Pretty much if the shaft is flush with the top of the pulley, then you should be in the right spot. Now we're going to go ahead and wrap the belt around the pulley here. Now we're going to insert the belt into the pulley stack, and this is now going to insert into that smooth pulley that's on the inside that you can't see, and it's going to come out the back and then hook back up to the carriage here. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the belt to the carriage itself. All you're going to do is take another one of those plates, and with the screws there, we're just going to screw it in, and the belt should hold securely. Now, you don't want to tighten this one too tight. You just want to make sure that at this point, all that you're doing is getting the belt installed, because we're going to have to go back the other direction here in just a moment. Once you've got that in place, go ahead and clip your belt. I left the length here just so that way I had a little extra in case I had to go back and adjust things. Now we're going to feed this belt into place, and then we're going to tighten this block down just like we did on the other side, and then we're going to route the belt back the other direction. Now we're working on the lower pulleys. So we're going to route the belt across this pulley here and to the back, and then that's going to slip through the back pulley, and we're going to go ahead and pull that across to the other side of the printer and then meet up with that rear pulley. Again, we're going to take a moment here and line up the pulley on the stepper. Now in this case, it works very much the same way, except the pulley is inverted, so it's pointing down. And then all we're going to do is line up that flat spot with the screw, and we're going to screw this in here and make sure that the shaft is flush with the top, and that's usually a pretty good indication of where it needs to be for the belt. You might want to come back and adjust these later if you see that your belt is too high or too low. Once we get this wrapped around here, then we're going to go back into the pulley tower, and it will be on the silver side there, so that's going to be on the smooth part of the pulley. And then we're going to meet back up with the carriage, and then we're going to slide that into the plate that holds the belt. And then once we've got that in place, we're going to tighten everything down. Then you're going to want to go ahead and clip the belt. Again, left myself a little bit of extra space just so that way, in case I have to go back or reroute the belts for any reason, I've got something to pull on. Now that we've got the belts attached, we're going to go back and tighten up the belts by using the tensioning screw here, and then we're going to tighten the screws on top of the stepper. You want to make sure that your belts are tight, but not so tight that the belts can't move and the carriage can't traverse easily. Our last step for today is going to be to install the cable guide, and this is going to allow us to work on feeding our Bowden tube and our electronic wires up there, and it installs with an M5 8mm screw and T-nut. All right, so a lot of work went into today's video. We went ahead and got the carriage assembled, and then the belts are all in place now. And I chose for this build here the Gates belt. A lot of times people really swear that these belts are considerably better. And of course, I've always bought a lot of the cheaper Chinese manufactured belts. Having put this on here, I have to say these belts seem a lot more solid than some of the cheap ones that I've bought before through Amazon. So it's considerably more expensive. Whether or not that pays off, I don't know. But I wanted to go ahead and put those on the reference build just to see what they were like. So maybe there's going to be an update video later on where I talk about belts, but I really wanted to just kind of give them a shot and see how they worked. So we got the belts in place, and then we also have the wiring and the carriage all set up. So all that we have to do for our next video is going to be the electronics, and then we'll have the core printer series completed. So we will work on some other things like the NeoPixels in some other videos. I'm not going to do that as the core because the NeoPixels are really kind of an optional thing. And if you're building the printer, I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about NeoPixels if you use a Duet or something like that where you may not necessarily have NeoPixels, or if you decided that you didn't want a lighted bed. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the next video with our electronics, and then at that point we'll have videos about how to tune it. We'll have videos about NeoPixels. So we'll continue the series on, but at the end of the next video, you should have a working printer. Remember, if you need any help with this, we have a Reddit group now for the LayerFused printers, and then we also have our channel Discord. So you can go ahead and reach out to either one of those for assistance in building this. I had some requests about some print guides on how to do the 3D prints and make sure that those come out good. So I'll be posting that information to Reddit. And of course, I'll include links down in the description. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider checking out our Patreon page where you can get access to some of our exclusive content. So that's going to be the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you mash that like button and don't forget to share and subscribe and click that bell so you get instant notification when we release the next video of this 3D printer series. So with all that said, I want to say thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.